Think of a famous athlete. Was practice an important element in honing his abilities? Did practice make them, more proficient at their sport? Let's do a quick mind game. Did Babe Ruth enjoy baseball before he became an all-star? Was practicing enjoyable? Sometimes it's important to remember that you actually like living free of addiction or compulsive behavior. This is Beth Wee in the Koinonia Kitchen, and we're going to be talking about step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. What else do people practice? Did Elton John practice the piano to get as good as he is at playing? Do you think it's possible that he ever makes a mistake, so he just practices some more? How about a doctor that practices medicine? Does that mean that no one will ever be worse off for his care? That he has to keep practicing to get better? Our lawyer, the practice of law. Practice does not always make perfect, but it does make a good way of life. By taking the 12 steps, you are knocking on the door of a new life. But the only problem is you're the only one who can open the door, and it's locked. The key that opens the door is called willingness. You cannot get the key from anyone but yourself. Even the higher power will wait for you to place that key in the lock and turn it. I'm going to give you a tip right now. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. When you're looking for the higher power, I'm going to give you a tip. A real higher power will never take away your right to choose. Just think about the false gods we've had in our past. It might be alcohol, drugs, food, gambling, pornography. They were false gods, and they robbed people of their ability to choose. So step 3 is where you choose to walk with the higher power. The higher power will help you, but only if you want the higher power to help you. The decision will always be yours to make. God will back you up, but only if you ask. Steps 1 and 2 didn't require action, only acceptance. Step 3 is where we're getting into action. You are beginning the action step. Willingness is the first action. To become willing is what we're doing here. We mentioned the importance of practicing. The effectiveness of your whole new life will rest on how well you do this step. It's mighty important. But you'll never get it down perfectly. You will just continue practicing. Practice, and the door will slam shut. Practice, and the door will slam shut. Put that key back in and practice. It takes practice to learn how to be willing to live a new way of life. The first requirement of having this new way of life is being convinced that self-will is not doing a good job managing your life. What are some of the other ways we express self-will? Exerting ourselves, manipulating situations, wearing me-colored glasses so that every situation I'm involved in is really about me, or pushing ourselves, or self-centeredness, being an egomaniac, or self-will. These are all different ways to describe what we've been doing in our attempt to manage our life. In the big book, which is the book Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a great quote. They say that an alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. What does that mean? If you find recovery from your addiction or from your compulsive behavior? Can you be an example of God's will run riot? I mean, possibly. For some of us, we're talking about a disease. It's a disease. So how do we get rid of self-centered thinking? With a disease, you're going to have a physical, you're going to have a mental and emotional, and you're going to have a spiritual reaction. Why not use the spiritual part and ask God to help? If you turned your will and your life, your will is what you think, your life is what you do. If you turn that over to a higher power, you're going to start to have new feelings in the relationship. You're going to belong. You're going to feel safe. They're going to help you develop faith. The more you feel belonging, the more you feel safety, the more faith is going to grow. Remember how safe you feel when you go to a 12-step meeting. Think about that when you need to practice step 3. Because instinct and logic sometimes will frustrate spiritual development. Instinct, well, it's an inborn knowing. It's part of your physical wiring. Logic is tied to intellect and mental powers of the person. So we just described 2 of the 3 human natures. What's the third nature? Again, I'm going to tell you, it's spirit. When you've only been operating on 2 natures for most of your life, incorporating the third will take time and practice. But that's where you're going to get power. And that's also where frustration can come in. It just depends on what you depend on. There's a right form of dependence and there's a wrong form. When we depended on a drug or alcohol or an addiction or a compulsive behavior, we were dependent and enslaved. But when we depend on a higher power, suddenly we find this new independence and freedom. Free to live clean, free to love yourself, free to choose and think for yourself, free to accept others as they are. If you're suffering from addiction or compulsive behavior, let's just look at your job. Do you have a job? Did you choose the job, or did you choose the job based on that your drug and alcohol and compulsive behavior being allowed to keep manifesting in your life while you do the job? To get that, we've stopped choosing things for ourselves. We're letting our addiction and our compulsive behavior choose what we do for a living, who we hang out with, where we go, if we go. Sometimes we just shut ourselves up and we think that we want to do that. When we were built for community, we were designed to connect. You know, when we put our faith in action, you begin to develop a track record. Not the old record. I know you got an old record. We all had one. The old self, the old bad behavior. But now you're developing a new track record. And you'll see that your faith will work and help you get through some hard times. And you'll realize you don't have to go through hard times alone anymore. And that will make you more willing to turn your will in your life over, because your faith is growing. Your faith will become trust one day. And your trust will become belief one day. Keep practicing. You will get there. But the moment something goes wrong, everything seems to happen in a moment. Everything we've been building just crashes to the ground. It's like pulling the wrong block on the Jenga. We snatch back our self-will and we try to manipulate the situation. Just one bad moment is all it will take. So I'm going to read you the long form of the Serenity Prayer. And listen, because the writer addresses that moment. You ready? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking, as he did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I might be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Reinhold Niebuhr wrote that prayer, And when dealing with addiction and compulsive behaviors, it's the moment that matters. When the moment rocks your world, you must demand another moment. You must pause. I love the acronym for PAUSE. Pray and use spiritual energy. When your mental or emotional independence is questioned, you're going to want to return to self-centered decisions and behaviors. You want to get back into the fight. But I got to tell you, self-sufficiency is not a good weapon if you're trying to recover and start a new way of living. And not deciding, well, that's making a decision not to. So those two aren't really that. So what are you going to do? Okay, some of you said, I'll go to a meeting, I'll call my sponsor. Those are all good things. But what are you going to do? Hopefully, you're going to make the decision to take the rest of the 12 steps. Before you go back to any old behavior, make a decision to take the remaining steps of the program. What if the step 3 just said, made a decision to take the rest of the 12 steps? Would that make it easier for you? If so, that can be your first step 3 decision. Can we coast through if we do a partial step 3? No. The other steps are only successful when step 3 is given a determined and persistent trial. You have to practice it every day. Just like Elton John practiced the piano, just like Tom Brady threw the football. It's an everyday thing. Do you ever wonder what God's will is for you? In the 12 and 12 of Alcoholics Anonymous, they gave a definition on page 40. It says that God's will for you is to bend your will to the principles behind the 12 steps. And this is one place that you can use that personal exertion. Turn your willpower to God's willpower. If you get disturbed, pause, ask for quiet, and say the serenity prayer. That's the hardest part, the pause. But remember, you're working on the 3rd step. Happiness is not a goal. Happiness is the result of how you live. They have a wonderful step prayer in step 3. It comes in the big book, and you'll find it there. The big book is the book Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm going to read it to you. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. You can do this. It's practice. One decision at a time. One decision at a time. Make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him. It will change everything. It's time to take addiction out of the shadows and shine the encouraging light of recovery on everyone affected. Good Seed Podcast is powered by BethWE.com, a nonprofit ministry based in Vero Beach, Florida. We'll start the uncomfortable conversations that turn despair into hope and complacency into action. Connect, communicate, and thrive with us. Check us out online at BethWE.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk again soon.